Well, hey, gang, thank you so much for joining us. This is Jen McDonough, also known as the Iron Jen from the 48days.net community, where we help people find their purpose and passion. Well, tonight we are so excited in our Ask a Coach series as we have Erin Robison on the line with us. Erin's going to be talking about Know Your Why. Erin is a licensed professional counselor, certified life coach, and speaker. She works with women and men to discover who they are designed to be so that they can experience excellence in their personal and professional lives. Erin has over 20 years of experience working with children and families as they navigate schools, disabilities, grief, and personal issues. She is a certified DISC instructor and play therapy practitioner. Always single, yet desiring marriage and family, Erin has a unique perspective on what it means to discover and live a fulfilling life. Erin coaches, speaks, and writes on the topic of personal design, communication, relationships, authenticity, self-care, parenting, and spirituality. You can find out more about her at her website at erinrobison.com, and we will be sharing that too at the end. Hey, Erin, thanks so much for joining us today. That's so kind of you to take out time to share the topic that I know is very near and dear to your heart, and that's to really know your why.
Thanks, Jen. I'm really excited to be here with you and the listeners.
Oh, well, let's dive into our topic. First off, why the heck is it so important to know your why?
Well, Viktor Frankl, who was a doctor during World War II, he was a Jewish man who was taken into captivity in the German concentration camps. I feel like he said it best. He says, "He who has a why can bear any how." And he writes on the meaning of life, and that when we know what our why is, then that is the cornerstone to knowing what the rest of our life is going to do. And for Frankl, he attributes that to surviving in the concentration camp. His story is powerful and just really resonates with so many people today.
Why is this kind of an odd question, but I'm going to just ask it anyway. Why is the how in Frankl's quote significant?
Well, the how, knowing what your how is. So when you know your why, you can bear any how. And the how are those difficult things. The why gives you the strength and the fortitude to handle the hard stuff in life. And so that could be difficult circumstances like Frankl, or something that we're experiencing today. It could be difficult people. When we know what our why is, it gives us the ability to push through and to work through those difficult times. Jen, have you ever seen 5-year-old girls play soccer?
Yes, I have a 6-year-old that actually plays daily on the school playground with the kids.
Yeah. And so I know that yours is a little boy, and I think that they're a little bit different, but when you watch little girls, 4 and 5-year-old girls play soccer, it's quite a different picture than if you were watching older kids or professionals play soccer. So what do you see? You know, the adult's reason for playing soccer would be to do something like score goals so that the person who has the team that has the most goals wins the game, right?
To win, yeah, we want to win.
That's right. But little girls, what are they doing? They are skipping down the field, holding hands with each other, picking daisies and running them to give them to their mother. Their why on the field is to have fun. And so when you understand what your why is, you can meet your purpose. But if you don't know what that is, then you're kind of like those little girls. If the rule of life, for instance, is to win the soccer game by scoring the most points, but you're like the little 5-year-old girls and you are just having a good time skipping and picking flowers, you're not going to meet your end goal. So it's really important. It gives you a direction for your life, knowing your why.
Erin, you touched on this quite a bit, but is there any types of questions besides knowing that, besides knowing your why answer? Does that make sense? So what kinds of questions does knowing your why answer? You touched on some of those.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Well, when you know your why, it can answer the question of where are you going? So you know what your why is. You know what your grand plan is. You know why you are doing the things you are doing, what motivates you. And so it answers the question, where are you going in this life? It also answers the question, why are you going there? When you have that end goal. So for instance, when you understand the why and the how, it acts like the light at the end of a really dark tunnel. So when you think of a dark tunnel and it's really dark and you find yourself in the midst of the tunnel, and if you have your why, it's the light at the end. The how can be really difficult. It can take you off in other directions, and you can get lost, and you become afraid and overwhelmed and scared. But the why is the light at the end of the dark tunnel, and it just allows you to continue to press forward. So another question that knowing your why answers is, who are you going to take with you on this journey of life?
That's something oftentimes we don't think of, I'm sure, that you see in your coaching practices. What, Erin, this is the big question here. So we've kind of discovered some questions of why it's important, but how do you discover your why?
Well, Jen, I'm a big fan of writing a mission statement, because that allows you to distill who you are and what, all those things about you personally. You can distill it into a succinct couple sentences statement of what is your mission in life. Because another answer that knowing your why, another question that knowing your why answers is, how do you know when you've arrived? If you know what your why is, then you know when you have arrived in this game of life, if you want to call it. You know what your end goal is, and so you know when you've arrived. It also narrows down the how are you going to get there? How are you going to get to this end goal? So when you can discover your why by creating a mission statement. I'm a big fan of that. Also, when you spend time getting to know yourself, asking yourself really hard questions and answering those questions, talking to the people that know you the best. Tell me what it is about me that you think that I love. Tell me what it is about me that I talk about all the time. What is it that I really love to do? What am I good at that I always come back to? How do I like to spend my time? When you can answer those kinds of questions about yourself, or others help you with that helps you to know your why.
Erin, I'm kind of putting you on the spot a little bit here, but do you have maybe an example of what a mission statement could look like?
Absolutely. So Jen, I wrote my mission statement this year, and I have it on the wall actually above my computer so that I can look at it every day and remind myself of what my mission is. So, I'm a spiritual person, so mine includes spiritual pieces to it, but it doesn't have to. So let me just read you what my mission statement is. So my mission is to use the skills and talents that God has given me to love others and point them to Him. I will make friends and family a priority and be intentional about nurturing those relationships. I will step out in courage to learn new things and have new adventures. I will share my knowledge and insight with the world around me as I strive to add value to the lives of others. I will always remember that I have the ability and fortitude to do good things because of Him. Now, these may just sound like words, but every line in that statement is very significant. And it was not something that I just wrote down one day. It was something that I came to after the process of thinking about, who am I, how am I created, and what do I really want to do with my life?
Erin, if someone is sitting down, because you hear you so eloquently put this mission statement out there, and you think, oh, that sounds really awesome. But then when you do your own, you're kind of like, where do you even begin? How do you even know how to write one of these? Can you give us some tips on maybe how to start with that?
Absolutely, yeah. So some of the first questions that you ask are, what are my skills? What do I do well? And these can be things that I that I do well that I really like to do, or things that I do well that maybe I don't necessarily like to do. It's in the beginning, you're just brainstorming. You're just writing down what are my skills? What are the things that I do well? What am I personally talented in? What do I do better than most people? What are some things that other people say, man, I wish I could do that kind, create woodworking like that, or I wish I could organize a closet like that. You know, what are my talents? When you ask yourself and you answer the question, what's my personality? Who am I? You know, what kind of words describe me? Am I introverted, extroverted? Am I a thinker or a feeler? Am I high energy? Am I thoughtful? You know, what are my personality pieces? What kind of words describe me? And then the last two pieces are really important. What am I passionate about? What do I really love? And those things all come out. I did the same process to determine what is my mission statement. But the final piece is, what are my values? What are the things that are important to me in this life? How do I want to spend my life? What do I value? And, you know, Frankl, he talks about that when he entered the concentration camp, he had with him his manuscript, his research because he was a psychiatrist and he was young, and he had with him research that he was writing a book, and he ended up losing that. The Nazis took everything, but he knew that he still had a message in him to share with the world. And even though he was the only one in his family to survive the concentration camps, he did survive because he knew he had a message. And so he valued the ability to share his message with the world.
Boy, when you talk about seeing that light at the end of the tunnel, when you talk about people who have survived those type of horrific conditions, that's about as tunnel-like as you can get, as severe as you can get. That's amazing. Erin, we have a couple questions, and for those of you calling in live or joining us live, you know, certainly type your questions in, or we can have you unmute and ask those questions. David asks a great question. It says, can you have more than one why?
Sure, but you know, quite honestly, they usually go together somehow. I mean, sometimes, like if you have more than one why, and I'd love to hear maybe what an example of that would be. Usually there's an overarching piece that is kind of your main why. But, you know, the thing is, Jen, that our lives change, and we grow, we develop, we have experiences that, you know, when we were in our 20s, our why was very different than it's going to be when we're in our 40s, which is sometimes going to be very different than when we're in our 60s. So absolutely. And sometimes it's just determining, what is my why right now? Or if I have more than one, how am I going to determine what direction that's going to take me?
Erin, if you have several whys, because maybe you're wearing several hats, do you have a way to kind of, is it good to prioritize those, or should we just have, you know, should all whys be the equal? How, when you've got someone wearing a lot of hats, you know, what advice do you give them?
Yeah, that can be hard, because when you're wearing a lot of hats, typically you're split. So if your hat is your work hat, and then your family hat, and then your friend's hat, if you're not careful, then you're compartmentalizing your life. And that, you know, we have what we used to call multiple personalities, right? And that kind of explains sometimes who we become when we feel like we have to compartmentalize. And that can be damaging. Or if we can find healthy ways to do that, then certainly can be success in that. But when you have multiple whys, I think really going back and asking yourself again, what is the overarching goal of my life? Because if you're not careful, you find yourself going in all these different directions, too many different directions, and it can be exhausting and overwhelming.
Erin, thank you. We've got a couple questions coming in as we're going here. Thank you for, David said that's got it. That's great. So thank you for sharing. before we go, Erin, we've got a couple more minutes here. I want to make sure before we get to the next couple questions, number one, how can we get a hold of you? And number two, this will give our listeners a chance who are calling in live to ask some questions. If you want to ask those live, if you're calling in, you can hit *6 to unmute, or you can just unmute yourselves. And I'll look here in the next minute to see if there's anyone unmuted. If I don't see anyone, we'll just move on and look in the chat for those. But Erin, where can we find you?
So Jen, my website is a great place to get in touch with me. There's a contact form there if you want to email me directly, but it's Erin K. Robison, ErinKRobison.com. And Jen, I wanted to let you and everybody know that I actually have a special gift for people who are on the call tonight, and it's a template on how to write your mission statement. So it actually walks you through all of the things that I talked about and more, and how to distill who you are into that succinct framework that you can refer to over and over again. And that can be found on my website, erinkrobison.com/48 days, as a special gift to 48 Days listeners tonight.
Nice. Thank you, Erin. If you're listening to the replay, I'm sure Erin will have that up for quite a while. Erin, that kind of answers the next question from Susan. She appreciated your description on how to know your why, but she was kind of hoping for a more methodical approach. So I'm assuming that the template kind of walks you through that.
It does. It really does. Now, Susan, you'll have to do your work, because generating the answers to the questions is going to come from you, but I feel like it's a very clear template to help you to ask those questions. Okay, what do I really love to do? It gives you some examples of some ideas. What am I really passionate about? What have I gone back to over and over and over again throughout my life? And here's the tip too, and I mentioned this earlier, but sometimes we have trouble answering those questions. And so when we ask people who know us well, a lot of times they're able just to give those really quick. When you say to your husband, your wife, your best friend, what do I really like? What do I talk about all the time? What do I say? If I had $1 million, what would I do with that? And they'll say, oh my gosh, you always say that if you had $1 million, you would be a painter or whatever. Asking other people, that oftentimes helps us get out of the kind of the cloud of confusion that we can be in when we're trying to think about ourselves.
Erin, I love that saying. I don't know how exactly it goes, but it's always easier having people read the label from the outside than it is reading our own labels from the inside. Is that kind of what you're referencing?
Absolutely, because we get confused. We're thinking too hard about ourselves, and it's that objective perspective that can really be and make an impact on us when think about the times when somebody said to you, they said, okay, so here's an example. When I was growing up, when I was a young adult, I went home to visit my mom, and she said to me, baby, why don't you go take a nap? You get grumpy when you're overtired. And I was like, what? I didn't know that I got grumpy when I was overtired, but in that moment, my mom saying that to me was this light bulb moment. And from then on, I can recognize that in myself. Why am I feeling grumpy? You know what? I'm tired. So when other people speak to us because they see things more clearly, that can really bring a lot of insight.
And sometimes that can come in the form, I'm guessing, of different people. Maybe you could give us some examples.
Sure, yeah. Coaches can do a great job of helping to bring in that objective perspective. They're the ones who the stakes are low, because sometimes the people in our lives that we love, they don't want to tell us things. They're afraid they're going to hurt our feelings. We're not going to receive it. And so having a friend, having a coach, having a counselor, having a colleague, maybe when the stakes are lower, sometimes they're willing to tell us things that other people would not.
Oh, that is important, because oftentimes it's hard to tell people that we're really close to, unless they're those true blue friends that can really step over those obstacles. Erin, this was phenomenal. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and wisdom. It's just been awesome. Tell us again where we can get a hold of you, and leave us, if you could, with some final thoughts.
Sure, yeah. So you can find me online, www.erinkrobison, ERINKROBISON.com. There is a special mission statement template there for you, erinkrobison.com/48 days. And, you know, Jen, I think it's really important as we wrap up to remember that you really have to know your why before you can know your how. Now, in the beginning, we talked about the how being of Viktor Frankl. When you have a why, you can bear any how, meaning the difficulties in life, the hard things that come your way, the crises, the tragedies, the traumas. But what I mean in this case is we often try to do this backwards. We try to figure out how to get down the road, how to get to the goal. But if we don't know why we want to get to the goal, then we often don't know how we're going to get there. So it's really important to know your why, to know what is it that really lights my fire, and what do I really want to live for, so that then we can figure out how we're going to make that happen.
Erin, awesome advice. Thank you so much, my friend. This has been amazing.
Thanks, Jen. I'm so glad to be with you guys. I wasn't looking at the chat, so I know, Jen, that you were taking care of that and all those questions. And I'm just grateful to be here and have an opportunity to see you, my friend, and everybody else on the call. So glad that you guys were here and they took time to be with us.
I know it is. We do very much appreciate your time, you guys, for joining us. We value it. We know that your time is precious. We hope that you're finding value in this Ask a Coach series that we're hosting through the 48 Days community. If you'd like more information on the 48days.net community, you can visit us at 48days.net. If you're interested in becoming a member, it's free. You're welcome to join. We just ask that if you're a spammer, stay clear away, because we're not interested in having you. But if you are a non-spammer looking to grow in whatever it is that you're doing in your purpose and passion, we would love to have you and would be absolutely delighted. So until next time, thank you so much for joining us, and we're going to sign off for this session of the Ask a 48 Days Coach session. Thank you so much, gang.
Thanks, Jen.